Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Be bold, be remarkable, be a legendary success. Join host Dave Van Hoos, international speaker, trainer, and CEO of Speaking Empire, and Kristen White, award-winning TV journalist and creator of Instant Celebrity Academy, as they give you insider secrets and the latest strategies of the top-performing, world-renowned, transformational authors, speakers, coaches, and professionals on the planet today. Listen, learn, and become the best. The world wants to share the stories of your legendary success, starting now.
Hello, everyone, and I'm your host, Kristen White, and we're here today also with my co-host, Dave Van Hoos. And this is a really exciting time because we are about a week away, a little less actually than a week away from the Be Legendary event that is happening out in Irvine, California. Dave, are you here with me?
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm just getting ready to pack up everything in my office and head out to California. So we're very, very excited. We've actually got the event sold out, the room block sold out, so we've got some really dynamic people coming, which we'll talk in a moment about. But before I get into that, I'm really excited about our guest, a personal friend and a mentor, and somebody who really has transformed the way I've looked at business. Met with him, I spent some time with him. He really got me to change my mindset and change my thinking as being a business owner. And this gentleman here has had so much success in multiple facets of different industries and businesses, from the speaking industry, from real estate, from being a best-selling author to all different kinds of businesses and his success. And we're going to break down the mindset and how he was able to accomplish all these successes and really to help us. And the reason we do this show, Kristen, I know, is to really give people principles and strategies that work now. And we're going to have a lot of fun, aren't we?
Absolutely. And, the thing I think that's most exciting, we've been doing the show now, about 6 weeks, and our numbers are just exploding. I mean, this is really spreading across the globe with people who are listening, because what's going on in the world out there today is that people are looking for strategies to help propel them forward, to make their mark on the world. And like you said, our guest today, he is fascinating. He was one of America's youngest self-made millionaires at the age of 27. At the age of 20, he invested in his first property. He has done incredible things, and he is exactly what we're talking about with this whole concept of to be legendary. That's where the world is sharing the stories of your success and how you are remarkable and how you're making this mark. And not just that, but the willingness to serve and teach others how to also have significant success and, all the things that come with that, more joy, more time for your family. I mean, you're even experiencing that yourself, Dave. You've had this incredibly strong track record of success, and, now you get to spend time enjoying, swim lessons with your daughter and all kinds of great stuff. And that's really what it's all about, is to have that life balance and that alignment that comes from really expressing your passion and your joy and serving others at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing and a perfect topic for Russ, just somebody who I just want to get to work here and kind of get into him. He's got so much valuable, great experience and learning lessons from us. So, Russ, are you with us?
I am here, Dave. Thank you for having me on. Krista, nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, thank you. Russ Whitney, he's our guest today. And Russ, I know we're going to talk a little bit about something called the inner voice. So this sounds intriguing. What is the inner voice, Russ?
Well, Inner Voice is the name of a book that I've written. It's not out yet, but will be. It will also be a e-learning program, and today it's a live program where we have live coaching and in-person meetings. But Inner Voice is something that I started on 4 years, going on 5 years now, and it came from really crisis. I had, as you said in the bio there, built a large business. I had numbers of real estate investments, both industrial, commercial, big ones. And then I built what has been billed the largest financial education company of its type in the world, which is called Whitney Education Group. And we had about 60,000 people a month from 2000 to 2007, about 60,000 people a month going through my training programs in over 7 countries. The company did about $250 million a year in business, and we helped lots and lots and lots of people. We're a publicly traded company, and the company went through a nice peaking, and then I ran into some personal problems. Relationship issue. My marriage of 29 years ended. We ran into some crises with the company, and it just seemed like my whole world was falling apart. And although I didn't lose all my money, Kristen, God was kind enough to leave me, still okay, financially independent. But I probably lost about 80% of my net worth. I had a Citation 7 jet, paid for free and clear, $7 million jet, 10-seater I had for 13 years. Ferrari, Rolls Royce, multi-million-dollar home. The company doing $250 million a year with $60 million in the bank and cash flowing $1 million a week. And then went through a crisis and a turn down where I ended up walking away from all of that to pursue the inner voice, the inner voice search for the truth. And I guess we'll get to that. I don't want to get too wordy, but the inner voice was a pursuit 4 years ago that came out of crisis. And I traveled the world over the last 4 years, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Israel, Hawaii, France, England, Haiti, Colombia, and my goal, Kristen and Dave, was to find out what life was all about, because I still had plenty of money, but now my relationship was gone. My world was crumbling. I fell into a lot of alcohol abuse and some, prescription drug issues, and that had never been in my life anywhere, and so I dropped everything because I had money, I'd raised a family, all that had happened, my life was crumbling. I still wasn't happy. There was an emptiness in there. And what I went on in pursuit was the meaning of life. What am I here for? What's my purpose? I have my health. I raised my children. I still, had funds. I had reached great pinnacles of success. I had authored 3 New York Times best-selling books. I founded, your listeners will probably resonate with this, but the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. I founded Rich Dad Education. I created all the learning materials for Rich Dad Education. Still the largest shareholder in that company, and that book has sold over 25 million copies. So I had all of this and still felt empty. So I went on a pursuit to find out for myself what life is about, what my meaning and purpose is here. And I don't mean to sound cliche about that, but I've worked over the last 4 years with some of the top business leaders, thought leaders, and spiritual leaders worldwide. And I've spent upwards of 20,000 hours, walked away from all my businesses and all that had made me who Russ Whitney was, whatever that is. And I spent almost 20,000 hours on this pursuit. And from that has come the book, Inner Voice, and the way of life called Inner Voice.
Russ, it's really interesting what you're saying, and I'm sure Dave will agree that it seems like there's a lot of people out there who, reach these incredible heights of success, and then it like all but collapsed. It's almost like this journey of self-discovery that I've heard a lot of people have had recently, and it's amazing how, you do go through that dark, I call it the dark night of the soul. I'm sure you've heard that called the same in other spiritual circles, but it's almost like you almost have to lose yourself to find yourself.
Well, I agree with that, and to not leave the audience, or listeners in suspense, there came a day when my first day of going to find this new way of life, my first stop was Hawaii. And I enrolled myself into a 60-day physical, mental, and spiritual retreat, working with some of the best brain doctors, therapists, spiritual leaders of different types, right on up to a kahuna, a Hawaiian kahuna. And if you don't know what that is, a kahuna has to be 60 years old to become a kahuna and has had to have worked for 25 years under another kahuna. That would be like the Pope of, spirituality for the Hawaiian, culture. And that's where I got what I'd call my first spiritual awakening, because I was just totally lost when I went out there. And again, I guess the best way for me to describe this, I've worked with spiritual leaders from the Christian religion to Kabbalah to the Jewish religion to the Tao Te Ching, Buddhism, you name it. And what I wanted to find out, because I grew up in the Christian religion is where my family raised me, but I never felt like I had a God, in my life. I believed in God, but I had this great success and made lots and lots and lots of money. And I remember saying to myself, thanks God for whatever part you had in that, and I'm on to the next thing now. If you want to help me with the next thing, come on. But I never really felt a conscious contact there. And so my goal was to work with all these religions. I want to find out, is one more right than the other? Is the one that's absolutely right? Are they all saying the same thing? Is there really a God? Is there a power of this universe? And if there is, and it has some direction in my life, well, how does it work? Because I didn't have any idea how it worked. And so the first conscious contact that I got was literally in Hawaii, and I talk about that in the book. But to not be too wordy with you and dominate your interview, let me just give people and you an idea of what inner voice is and how it works, at least for me. And I'm just going to tell you that the whole inner voice way of life, the principles and strategies have metamorphosed over the last 4 years and come full circle. They don't look at anything like they did. But here's what inner voice is, basically. In the book, I talk in two voices. I talk in the voice of a warrior, and I talk in the voice of a statesperson. And in the warrior, I coin that as ages 20 to 40 years old. And some people can get it at 35 or 30. Some never get it. But let's just work in that time frame for a visual. 20 to 40 years old, when I look back at my own life, I was operating totally on human training. All I had was what was taught to me by others, mom, dad, brother, sister, preacher, teacher. And those human traits generally center around selfishness, self-centeredness, arrogance, finger-pointing, judging, blaming, criticizing, sarcasm. You throw a little self-pity and victim in there. And that's how I operated, and that's how we most of us operate, because we're in the information gathering time of our life. So we don't know anything really at that point. We're trying to find the wife. What's the right career? Raise the kids, buy a car, get another car. We chase lots of rabbits during that time of our life, and we don't catch a lot of them. Some of us do, some of us don't. But we make lots of mistakes because we don't really have the benefit of wisdom. And then let's go to the statesperson now. In the statesperson phase of life, let's say that's 40 on, and again, some people can get it at 35 or 30, and there's no set time. But that's where that life crushing comes about that you were talking about, that dark hole. And that's how most people find it. Either life crushes us, someone crushes us, or we crush ourselves. And it gets us to a rock bottom in our life. And the only way we have is to look up. And we start to experience a little bit about mortality. And if we're lucky, the veil starts to get lifted, and we start to learn a little bit about humility and tolerance and patience and letting go of resentments and forgiveness. And we start to learn that those things are a great power, where in my warrior years, I thought they were a great weakness. And humility particularly is, I've heard the word humility, but I think most people did like I do. I was able to define humility, but how do you do humility? And how does that play a part in life and success? And I can say this as we get through the interview. I hope to give as much meat as I can. But in this last 4 years, I've had more happiness, more joy, more peace in my life, with the absence of anger, anxiety, frustration, fear, and doubt than ever in my entire life. Even though the barometer is no longer, money. How much money? New car, bigger house, bigger business. That's where I put where I put a lot of weight on what life was about, because I didn't know any better. That's all I knew. So does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I got a chance to work with Russ, Kristen, and really he just changed my mindset. It was, all the trainings that I've learned was, drive more, drive traffic, all these different principles. But Russ kind of taught me, instead of looking outward, to start looking inward. And so, Russ, if somebody was just starting a business or they had a successful business, how can they change their mindset and to start using their inner voice, their intuition, and working from their center of power? If you could maybe have 5 principles or 5 steps, what would that be?
Well, let me start with the inner voice. So you can call the inner voice God. You can call it, in our warrior years, we call the inner voice aha. The stars are aligned, a lucky moment. You wouldn't believe what just happened to me. The timing was right. That's an unconscious contact, okay? And then there's a conscious. That's when we're being directed, but we don't know it. And what I found is by getting that conscious contact, knowing that there is a power of the universe and there is direction in my life every day, made a big difference. So let me just start with this. Step 1, if you're a warrior, here's how it happened for me. I was 20 years old. I was a very abused child, horribly abused, and I won't go into that here. I quit high school in the 11th grade because my father had died when I was very young. And I got in trouble with the law, so I actually went to prison for 3 years, from 17 to 20 years old. And when I got out of prison, 3 months, all I wanted to do when I got out of prison is I wanted to do things right. I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to get that job and go to work for 25 years and get my watch and my pension, like normal people. And within 3 months after I got out, I met my soon-to-be wife. 3 months later, we got married. So I didn't even know my wife. 3 months we were married. And we were married for 29 years, by the way, and had two great children together. But anyway, I got a job, and I was working in a slaughterhouse making $6 an hour, killing hogs for a living. That was my job at 20 years old. And I kept getting this thought in my head. Now, this is the unconscious contact. This is what I call the unconscious contact with the inner voice of God. It kept telling me, you can do something better with your life. You can do something better with your life. But I didn't know what. I didn't know what to do. And then one day, by coincidence, an Entrepreneur magazine, I don't know how it got in my hand or on my desk, but there again is the aha or coincidence. But I don't think so. And I looked in this magazine. I'd never even seen an entrepreneur in that magazine. I had no idea about how to start a business. That wasn't even in my mind. Getting a job was all I knew. And I started this magazine. I looked at it back, and there was all these how to get rich ads. I thought, wow, I was so ignorant at that point. I didn't know any better. But how to make money, mail order millions, stuffing envelopes, and all this stuff. I started setting away for all these get rich quick ads. And the first run, none ever worked for me. And then one day I sent off for this book on real estate investing, and there was no magical answers in it, but it had a concept in it, which talked about buying rundown houses. Well, I didn't have any idea I could or couldn't, but this book, and I think this is pivotal, this book said I could be a millionaire. And that's what I latched on to. A lot of people ask in real estate, and that's how we made his millions. Well, I did make millions in real estate, but the passion wasn't real estate. The passion was that book said I could be a millionaire, and I believed it. And that's what I wanted more than anything. Now, and it was never about the money, by the way. So, inner voice leads us to our passion and purpose. So when you start to read the inner voice or study the inner voice principles and strategies that I've developed, you learn all of the principles and strategies, but the end result is it leads you to your passion and purpose. What are you here for? What do you like to do? What has your experience been? And let me just mention this to your listeners and to you also. If you go to the internet and go to Google and Google Steve Jobs, and I say Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer, Steve Jobs, and then Google his Stanford University commencement speech. He talks exactly about what I'm talking about right now, and his title of it is How to Connect the Dots Backwards. You know, like Kristen, is your passion and your purpose supposed to be a radio host? Dave, are you going to be a trainer for the rest of your life? These may just be stepping stones. And rather than bumble into what you're supposed to do by accident, inner voice gives you a path to find it and to find it on purpose. So let me just give you an example. We go back to this. I wanted to be a millionaire. I didn't know it then. I know it now. I wanted to be a millionaire, not for the money, not for the Rolexes and the car. It was never about the money for me. I wanted to be a millionaire because I had a need to show all of those people, this stepmother that abused me, made me eat my own vomit, tied me by a dog leash by my neck, and other horrible things. But I had a need to show all those people who said I was nobody and nothing that I was somebody. And I thought being a millionaire, that's the idea. If I was a millionaire, I'd show them. Now, we all know money doesn't, do all that. But that's what drove me, not so much the real estate. And that's what drove me was really the passion to be a millionaire. At age 27, I hit that net worth of $1 million. And I'm on the unconscious contact with you right now. Okay. So if you're in the warrior mode, just listen to the events. I got this idea to write a book. I never wrote the book, my first book, because I thought I was a good author or it was going to sell millions of copies. The only reason I wrote this book is because I still had some low confidence level, low self-esteem. And I wanted to write the book so if something happened to me, my kids could pull this book off a shelf and see that their dad wrote a book. I wanted them to be proud of me. Well, you know what? The next thing that happened was for the publisher to publish the book, they wanted me to come speak at their seminars. They kind of like the ones that you do these days. And when I spoke at the seminar, I just told them what I did. I didn't do anything miraculous. I bought rundown properties, fixed it up, and built a net worth out of that. But when I spoke on the stage, all of a sudden people looking at me as like this guru or this guy who was special or knew something that they didn't know. And you know what? That started to build my self-confidence. It started to build my own self-esteem. And I loved helping these people. It made me feel good. Today, in hindsight, the seminar business was probably one of the least profitable for me, but it's the one I loved the most. Why? Today, I realize that I had a need to save people. For me, my passion to help people and save people because nobody was ever there to save me as a young kid. And then, you know what, as I went on, so here's the unconscious contact. So for the warrior, we need to take a look at the experiences that you have had in life up to today. What have you been trained in? Generally, we'll find our passion and our purpose, what I find with the hundreds of people that I've worked with, through our childhood wounds and our childhood experiences. That's what leads us to our eventual passion and purpose.
Hey, Russ, I'm going to stop you there for just a second because we're going to take just a quick break because you're raising some incredible points, and I love what you're talking about. But I want to give that number out for some of our callers so that they can join us, and we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back, but if you're listening and to all this incredible information, you can call in at 646-929-2228. Again, that call-in number for guests who want to talk directly to Russ Whitney, 646-929-2228, and we'll be right back after this short break.
That's too much. I forgot about this.
And we're back here on the Be Legendary Show, and I'm your host, Kristen White, here with Dave Van Hoos, my co-host, and we're interviewing Russ Whitney. And before the break, Russ, you were talking about how powerful it was to have a belief, even though there was no evidence that could be possible. You know, you were working in a slaughterhouse, and you believed that you could be a millionaire, and that belief alone was what carried you forward. How important do you feel is it for people today to believe that things can happen in their lives beyond what is visible in their current existence?
Yeah, belief actually is a very important part of the inner voice principles and strategies, and I'll go to those in a moment because we didn't really talk much about statesperson yet. But belief is critically important because, in my experience, over the last 4 years of practicing these principles, I don't always get them right, and I fall backwards, sometimes like everyone else. But belief is critical because what I've experienced is I manifest what I believe. But if a person is walking around, and I worked with a person like this recently, an inner voice student, and kind of depressed and always looking at the negative side. We got to talking about it one day because we were doing daily readings on inner voice. And what I showed him was that self-talk is a self-hypnosis. If you tell yourself you're depressed, if you tell yourself you're not happy or things are bad or that's what your life is going to be made of. Happy is a choice. Sad is a choice. Positive is a choice. Negative is a choice. When somebody says I'm depressed, I say, well, the first question I have is, well, how did you do that? Because depression doesn't come over us like the flu. We don't just catch it by osmosis. You have to take action to be depressed. And the way that generally happens is something bad happens in one's life. So they dwell on, oh, this happened to me. And then they take themselves to something else that bad that happened. And then the breathing slows down. And before you know it, you're depressed. Well, when somebody says, well, I'm depressed, I say, well, how long have you been depressed? Some people will say a minute, an hour. I've had people say 20 years. And so how do you get out of depression? You get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you change your thought. You go do something that makes you happy. Either you go get some ice cream, or you go to the gym, or whatever it is that you like to do, and you build on the positivity. So belief is critical. I think that what I've learned, and keeping in mind that these inner voice principles, I didn't invent them. These are all things that have been taught to me by others in various countries, over 20 countries. So every facet of religion at the highest levels, I think the processes are all the same. And the belief part is critical. But one of the only things that we're in control of is our thoughts. You control your thoughts. Your thoughts then control your words. Whatever I'm thinking, that turns into my words. Then they turn into actions. They turn into behaviors. That's what develops character. So belief and self-talk is critical.
Russ, if somebody was in their business or getting ready to start their business and they're just not getting the results that they want, or they just don't believe in themselves, what are some of the strategies that they can do to empower themselves?
Well, one of the first things that I would do is this. Let's talk about the warrior and the statesperson. Okay, remember that warrior is information gathering. We're still stuck in selfish, self-centered, finger-pointing, judging, but we're riddled with character defects. In the statesperson era, we start to learn new behaviors. And the inner voice, it's not a one-size-fits-all. I never tell anybody what to do. It's a series of suggestions on how to handle age-old problems. And I give you a new suggestion. You try it on for size. If it works and you get evidence, you keep doing that. If you get a suggestion you don't like it, well, you know what, put that aside till later. So let's go there. What can they do if they're confused about business? Business isn't working for them. They're in the wrong business. In the warrior mode, we would call it a things to do list. So, listen, Dave, have you ever done a things to do list? You wake up in the morning, things to do, and you start writing what you have to do for that day?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love my to-do list.
I used to before I spent some time personally with Russ, and Russ is right. You you get up, you drive your business, you're going to make 10 calls, you're going to do an event here, you're going to do this, that, and each day you're driven by your to-do list because you think if you do this to-do list, then you're going to have success.
Well, let me go to explain that to everybody. The things to do list in the warrior phase. Here's how it generally happens. You either do it at night or in the morning. I'm going to go with the morning right now. We get our legal pad and we write things to do. Immediately, thoughts start coming into our mind. Maybe 5 or 6 or 7 things come right up just like that. We don't even have to think about them. And as I look back in hindsight, that's exactly how I did it. Now, when the things to do, first of all, those 6, 7, or 8 things are coming from the creator of the universe. We are attached with a little g, in my opinion, with heart and mind. We're attached. I used to believe this, but I don't believe that God floats around the sky, looks like Moses, and takes score. I believe that's right in our heart and our mind. So when I did my things to-do list, 6, 7 things come up immediately. As soon as I start to make my to-do list a job, in other words, now I have to say, well, I could call Bob, and let me see, I could follow up on that thing. That's self-will. So I say the first 5, 6, 7 things are coming from the creator of the universe. Then we go into self-will. And I can remember, Dave, I had, 60 things on my to-do list. And I'm going to tell you that
60.
Most of the time,
52
of them never came to pass. They either never came to pass, or I didn't have enough time to follow up on. So I put all this undue pressure on myself because I was never in the moment. That's one of the things we'll learn in the statesperson training, is how to be in the moment and why that's so important in the game of life. Now, let me take it to the statesperson. The warrior does a things to-do list. The statesperson does what we call in the inner voice two-way conscious contact. Two-way conscious contact is the same thing as a to-do list, but it invites more variety. So here's how I do it. I usually write some gratitude things. I'm thankful for my house or the blessings that I have, whatever it might be. And then I write this, very simply: God, direct me in my thinking, show me your will for me, and give me the power to carry it out. Now, you can call him God, Yahweh, Jesus, Buddha. I don't think God cares what you call him, as long as it's respectfully and it's the creator of the universe. But God, direct me in my thinking, show me your will, not my will, your will for me, and give me the power to carry it out. Now, that's no different than a to-do list. Thoughts come quickly, and thoughts come from the creator of the universe, okay? So what happens now is I get my journal, and as I write that, I sit back, all of a sudden thoughts come. It could be call Brian, follow up on this. I can get a business thing, a personal thing, or a behavior thing. So instead of just things to do and focusing on work things, because that's all I'm asking for, I'm now asking for the variety of life answers. And once I get done, okay, as soon as the thoughts stop, I stop writing, okay, as soon as it becomes a job. Then what we do in the statesperson era is we put it through what I call the 4 absolutes. How do I know which is God, or which is the creator of the universe, or the God of my understanding? How do I know which is God and which is my own BS? Well, the 4 absolutes are this. This is the acid test. Is it honest? Is it unselfish? Is it pure? And is it loving? If it fits honest, unselfish, pure, and loving, you can bet that that's coming from the creator of the universe. If it's coming with anything like finger-pointing, judging, blaming, suing, lashing it out, blaming another person, that's your own BS.
Yeah, Russ, so I think it's like this, just listening to you. You maybe have 2 operating systems. One operating for what you want in life, and that's your to-do list, which you're never in the moment. You're always just doing things. Or you have listening to your inner voice, which is another operating system coming from your higher self, that then you're kind of taking out intuitively what your destiny is unraveling for you. Is that kind of true?
I think that's okay. I think that's a good description. I think that the best way for me is this. I look backwards and I can see where things fell into place in my warrior mode. I didn't know whether I was being directed in that direction or not. Today I do, because I do that routine that I just told you every single day. And let me give it to you in the basic way. Let's say you're walking in the mall, okay, and there's a whole crowd of people in the mall or what have you, and you bump into somebody or somebody bumps into you. You walk 3 steps and you say, I should say I'm sorry. That's the first pure thought, okay? That's the direction from the creator of the universe. So the first pure thought that we generally get is that direction. And then the human comes in. Well, I'm kind of in a hurry. I don't have time to say it. I didn't bump them that hard, or they could have said I'm sorry to me. You know what I mean? That's all the rationalization, justification, and minimization to stay in human. So I believe there's two of us, Dave, in every body, to say it in another way that you just said it. There's the human self and the soul self. In my Christian upbringing, they taught me that the body has a soul. And when we die, the soul goes to heaven or wherever it goes, and then the body decays. Today, I no longer believe that. And again, this is my own experience. I'm not telling anyone else what to believe. Just be open-minded. But my experience is that the body does not have a soul. The soul has a body. Because if the soul goes somewhere, it has to come from somewhere. And I believe there's two of us. You know, my first warrior phase, I had to be selfish, self-centered, arrogant, finger-pointing. I had all those character defects. That's all I knew. Today, I can still do that. I can still be that, and I can switch over anytime I want to. I just don't have to anymore because I've learned the inner voice principles of humility, tolerance, patience, letting go of resentments, forgiveness. I've learned how to manifest through that. I've also learned that I am powerless over most people, places, and things, and when I try to control or manipulate outcomes, then my life becomes unmanageable. So I've learned the principle and strategy of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean give up. It means give up the human fight. And when well, let me just stop there. I'd love us to go to the game of life, though. I'd love for us to discuss, hey, Russ, when we went on this mission, did you find the meaning of life? Would you guys be interested in knowing that?
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And, you know, one of the things that I'm just hearing so much of in your voice is this passion and excitement. You know, I think that what you're talking about is so important for all of us who are listening to remember, is that we are, you know, spiritual beings having a human experience, and to look at it more from the inside out, that's how it is, and that it's the soul is wrapped around this human body. And I love what you talked about, how you have this daily practice. You know, I teach a class called Spirituality Boot Camp, which is the 7 principles of spiritual practice. And I know even for myself, and I'm sure this is true for Dave too, you know, we have, you know, practices that we do every day that kind of creates that inner compass that's like, you know, what's my divine to-do list versus what's the one that's written on a piece of paper? I mean, Dave, what are your thoughts about that? Maybe we lost Dave for a minute, but you know, I think that it is so significant about that. But I want to talk about the game of life right when we come back. It's time for one more break, and if you know, if there is some time for some callers, if you're listening to the show. A lot of incredible information here today with Russ Whitney. That guest call-in number is 646-929-2228. Again, 646-929-2228. You're listening to the Be Legendary Show, and I'm your host, Kristen White, here with Dave Van Hoos from Speaking Empire, and we'll be right back after this break. And we're back here on the Be Legendary Show, and I'm your host, Kristen White, here with Dave Van Hoos, and we're talking to Russ Whitney. And right before we went to the break, we were, you know, getting ready to cover the game of life. And I love the way that sounds because, you know, a lot of people out there today, Russ, don't look at life as much of a game. They look at it as a chore, or it's work, or, you know, it's struggle. And that
it is good.
Yeah.
Well, that struggle too. Good.
Right, and that just gets us in a place where it's hard to find our joy.
Yeah, interesting. Let me answer this question though. Dave led off with a question on if a person having trouble finding their business or finding their sweet spot, give them some tips, and then I went on to things to explaining the things to do in the conscious contact or the two-way conscious contact. Well, in the two-way conscious contact, that's really how we find that. We find our business. You know, for example, here's a great one. In my warrior phase, you'll see this in the book, I was looking for a business after I had financial independence in real estate. I wanted to buy a business to create more cash flow so I could buy more real estate. Well, I looked at car washes, coin-operated laundromats. Back then, video games was a big business. And none of those worked out for me. One day I got a call. It wasn't even something I was looking for. And it was from this furniture co-op that was a direct sales business. And I ended up going down there as a customer and, you know, was so impressed with the salesman because I didn't know anything about sales. And, you know, without going into a long story about it, I ended up investing into the business, working for nothing, but they trained me on all the communication strategies of direct sales. And that not only increased my real estate business and made it grow, but it taught me how to become a public speaker. It taught me how to write, because everything is about communication skills. So there is another example of sometimes when we're chasing without surrendering and giving or learning the principles and strategies to get in touch with our inner voice, we're missing the boat. We're so stuck in self-will, what we want, we, and I, that we don't listen to or allow things to fall into place. We think we have to make everything happen. And
I think that's a great point. I just want to cut in for a second. That sometimes when we're coming from that will, especially if it's in our business and we're pushing, sometimes there's signs around us that are like, not yet, be patient, wait. And when we're coming from the will and then we notice that things kind of fall apart or they're not coming together, that it's important to pay attention in that moment. Because I will tell you, even for myself and my own business, and that I've noticed that there are times when I've had an idea, and this idea didn't really come to fruition for quite some time. And then when it did, it was amazing because everything had lined up, and that it's important to pay attention to that divine timing.
Well, you know what? That's a great description. No, in line with that, let me address struggle, and that gift and that joy. What I've learned about inner voice and this way of life is the gift of life is in the struggle. So let's say it again. The gift of life is in the struggle. If we didn't have struggles, we would have no reason to try to be more tolerant, more patient, more loving, more kind. We'd have no reason to try to improve ourselves. We certainly would have no reason for a God, and we'd have no reason to try to be a better person today than we were yesterday. It's like a fruit. When a fruit is green, it grows. When it's ripe, it rots. So if we had no struggle, we'd be laying around on the couch rotting away. Struggle gives us a reason to try to improve and get better. And I believe, again, that what I've learned over the last, 4 years, I'd say, is, again, I used to think that God floated around the sky, looked like Moses taking score. Today I've experienced that there are immutable laws of the universe that govern the universe. If we learn these immutable laws, life gets very easy. We will find not only our passion, our purpose, we'll find our pot of gold. We'll find our happy, joyous, and free. And what I mean by that is this. What is an immutable law of the universe? First of all, immutable means irreversible, can't change it, has to be, must happen. That's immutable. So here's an immutable law of the universe. You can never plant a pumpkin seed and ever get a thorn bush. You plant a pumpkin seed, you don't get a thorn bush, you get a pumpkin. All right? If a farmer plants a crop and he nurtures it, now consider this your business or your life. Farmer plants a crop. He nurtures it, he fertilizes it, he waters it. He's got to get a harvest. Now, he could have a bad rain year. Hello?
We're still here. Dave's daughter is helping us co-host the show today.
Okay, well, that's nice.
Yeah, I got my little one here that she's listening in. She just came up. But we'll let you get back, Russ.
Okay. Well, if the farmer plants the seed, he's got to get a harvest. He could have a bad rain year, a bad sun year, but if he continues to plant, continues to fertilize and nurture, he's got to get a harvest. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Those are immutable laws of the universe. Sowing and reaping. If I'm working on a business, I continue to educate myself. I continue to do. Well, let me go to what we'll call it an immutable law. We call it the law of cause and result. So I'll address that business owner that Dave was talking about earlier. The law of cause and result says this: immutable law. If you get into business, now this is also addressing Dave's question on how does a business person find the right business for them. The law of cause and result says this: if you get into business just for the money, and a lot of people do that, the get-rich seminars, the networking business, the multi-level marketing, they're all get-rich messages. the law of cause and result says this: if I get into business just for the money, chances are I'm going to fail. But if I find a business that I really like, something that I'm passionate about, I like to do, I educate myself and then do the business correctly, the money comes automatically. So those who are focusing strictly on the money usually don't do so well. The whole point of inner voice is how to find that passion and purpose inside yourself. You know, and I made money in real estate. I've written 3 New York Times bestsellers. I've had developments, success in lots of those. But I was passionate about each of them. But I'm not involved in those now. I've been working, and Kristen, this is an important point. For the last 4 years, I've given up everything that described me, I guess, and in my own mind. And that was all the businesses I've walked away from. I put management into them, and I'm not doing them. I've spent 4 years, 20,000 hours, working on these inner voice principles and strategies, not to give anybody my opinion. I've spent 20,000 hours trying them on for size, getting evidence, seeing which ones really work and which ones don't. And so the inner voice principles and strategies are not about Russ's opinion. They're about my experience, my strength, and my hope.
So, Russ, let me ask you a question.
Means,
I'd like to ask you a question about that. So it sounds like you used yourself as a laboratory. So is there one in particular that is like a personal favorite or that you use a lot yourself?
One certain principle or strategy?
Yeah, one certain exercise or principle. You know, you said that you spent 20,000 hours and, you know, really using yourself as a laboratory. Is there one exercise in particular that you really resonate with?
Yeah, well, there's lots of them, but let's do a few if you don't mind. I'll start with one that comes to mind right away is when I point the finger at somebody, you know, I'm blaming you for this or that went wrong. It's your fault, or you did this, or you did that. What I've learned is when I point the finger at somebody, I have 3 fingers pointing back at myself. So if you do that exercise physically with your hand right now, point the finger at somebody, you'll see you have 3 pointing back at yourself. What I've learned is it's never anybody else's fault. It's never the economy's fault, or my mom's fault, or my wife's fault, or my brother's fault, or the other competition's fault. I can always be more patient, be more tolerant, be more kind. I can be more forgiving. When I'm pointing the finger, what is the creator of the universe telling me that I have to improve upon? And the other thing is when I'm holding resentments or I'm mad at somebody or angry, what I've learned is that's like me drinking the poison and hoping the other person dies. Because while I hold
I've heard that before.
Yeah,
you know, that's a really important principle, especially when we're talking about forgiveness or the lack of forgiveness, that when we hold resentment and anger inside of ourselves because something has happened to us through the channel of another person, that in fact we're not doing anything against them. We're only harming ourselves by our inability to release that poison inside of ourselves.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. The inner voice and spiritual principles are very selfish, and they're selfish because when we start to mature, we never do them to the other person. I'm not more patient, kind, and tolerant to help the other person. I do that to save my own life. Do others get the benefit out of it? Yes, but they help me keep my happy, joyous, and free spirit.
Yeah, you know, I think, Russ, in business it's very challenging, and, you know, it happens a lot. You know, you've got employees, you've got customers, you've got business partners, you've got joint venture relationships, and if it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to, then sometimes you do hold these resentments, and you're right. Sometimes for me, I dwell on it, and I just need to just let it go, call the person up, and take responsibility for every action. So it can be challenging. But I think, like you said, with your principles, the inner voice, that helped me release that so I don't keep that bottled up and move on.
Yeah. And there are the thing that I did with inner voice was that I didn't want to make it informational. I wanted it to be experience, strength, and hope. In other words, have I had an experience like you? What did I learn that was a strategy and I put into place, and why is my life better? And so it's riddled with principles and strategies. In other words, how is a different way to think about this, and what's the action program, that makes it better? And when I mention that, I take it right back. And Kristen, you asked me earlier to explain my take on the we're talking about life, the game of life, I guess. So let me explain that, because we're getting close to the end of the interview, and this is pretty meaty, and it's the basis of the Inner Voice program. What is the game of life about? What are we here for, okay? And this is what I went on the search for. Where I was in life, whether you have $100 million in the bank or whether you have $1, I looked at life like this. I'm on a hamster wheel, like in the pet store, the hamster that runs on that wheel and it spins and he goes nowhere. And so just consider ourselves on that hamster wheel. Buy a car, get the wife, get a house, go to work, pay the bills, raise the kids, and we're on that wheel and we're on that wheel and we're on that wheel. Every once in a while we have a vacation day or a family day and we say life is good, and then we're back on this hamster wheel again. 75 years later we die. I looked at that and said, if that's what life is about, it would if there's a God, it would have to be a very sadistic God, because what's the point then? And then I learned this. Here's what I learned, and I've adopted this as a way of life for me. The game of life. Why are we here? First of all, the 30,000-foot view is, I believe that I'm here to take my experiences to try to make this world a little better place. However I can do that, however I can contribute, and to help other human beings along the way. That's the big picture. So here's how I do that. The game of life, for me, I'll use the analogy of basketball. If you play basketball, the game is basketball. You shoot baskets and you keep score. The time clock is an hour. So the game is basketball, the time clock is an hour. The scoreboard tells us whether we're winning or losing, whether we have more points than the other team. Okay, simple enough. All right, and what's the game of life about? What I found is that the game of life is a search for the truth. So basketball is basketball, that's the game. Life is a search for the truth. What truth? The truth with me and the God of my understanding every single day by practicing that two-way conscious contact and finding out what the creator of the universe put me here to do. And I simply do that. If you all have pencils and pens, then write this down and start it this way. God, directed me my thinking today. Show me your will for me and give me the power to carry it out. And sit back, let the thoughts flow, and just write. Don't judge it. Don't edit it. Just write. So the game of life is a search for the truth. What's the time clock? The time clock is today only. In my previous life, I was always in tomorrow, next week, and next year, and next deal, and next this, and next that. When I went on this search in all the different religions and spiritual beliefs, at the highest levels, they all believe that God did not create human beings with energy for tomorrow, next week, or next year. We're not supposed to be in tomorrow, next week, and next year. And if we live there, all we find there is anxiety, frustration, fear, and doubt, because it's not here yet. What if this? What if that? Am my business going to work? Is it not going to work? Are my kids going to be this? When we live in tomorrow, we get anxiety, anger, frustration, fear, and doubt. God made it very clear in all these top levels of religion. If you have anxiety, anger, frustration, fear, and doubt, you got to bring it back into today. Today, the bills are paid. Today, we're on this radio show. All the people listening are probably fine today. So we have no need, if we stay in today, for anxiety, frustration, fear, and doubt. Now, they also say at these highest religions, or these highest levels of spirituality, that if God did not build us with the energy for tomorrow, next week, or next year, we certainly don't have energy for yesterday. When we go into yesterday, what we find there is usually guilt and shame. Now, we can say, well, wait a minute, I have good memories of this or that. Yeah, yes, we all do, but that's generally not why we go into yesterday. We go in there for I could have, I should have, why didn't I, etc.
Russ, it's interesting. I love what you're talking about. I'm sure Dave will agree. I think as business owners and people who are entrepreneurs, we try certain things that work and certain things that don't. And if all our energy is in the past of why didn't this work, or all of our energy is in the future of what can I do to make this work, we're not able to be in the present to fully participate, to bring forth the energy to actually create the success and that funnel of, connectedness that we could. And, Dave, don't you agree it's a pretty relevant point, when you're trying to get your business going, you got to just be in what you know today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, like Russ is talking about, live in the past or live in the future, but they very few live in the now. And, that's one thing Russ has really helped me and my whole organization. Chris and he came in, and out of a good serving heart, he came actually to my office and worked with us, and it's completely transformed our business within a very short time. The joy, the happiness, the results that we're getting is just so much better. All the employees are having more fun, they're playing, and we're getting much more results. So proof that what Russ is teaching us absolutely worked for me.
And time really flies, Russ. I have to tell you, we're out of time for the show today. I just want to thank you so much for being here with us and sharing, the inner voice and these principles and strategies. And I know that
Hey, Kristen?
Yeah.
Can I interject 1 minute? Because
Sure.
we didn't get to the close.
All right.
The game of life, search for the truth. Time clock today, stay in the moment. How do we know whether we're winning or losing? We don't leave that hanging. How do I know today whether I'm winning or losing at the game of life? At the end of the day, what is my ratio of being happy, joyous, and spiritually free with the absence of anger, anxiety, frustration, fear, and doubt? If I end up each day there, I'm winning at the game of life.
Absolutely, Russ. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we are going to be in California next week. And to all of you, hope to have you join us there. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.